United, those who are coming from MPP.
Yes.
You know, they took one of the P away from the NPP. So MPP is left with only one P. Let me say good morning to you, my brother. I mean, this is about the third time that I'm sitting on a show with Uncle Kwesi. I must say I am honored to be on a show with such a very important personality and your good self. I think this is the first time, right?
Yeah.
So the issue of reparation, I think that let me commend His Excellency John Dramani Mahama for his thought and his sense of responsibility. As a historian himself, I'm sure that he's read a lot about what happened in terms of the slave trade and all that, and made a very excellent presentation to the entire world. And he got a very enviable result, having so many, over 100 and something, countries voting to uphold his idea of repatriation. I think that it was an opportunity given to the Western community, especially those countries that participated in these very barbaric and very horrible crime, to make an amends and to realize that at the end of the day, above all things, human, whether you're black or white, whether you're blue, red, tall, whether you're short, doesn't matter the language you speak, it doesn't matter the kind of environment you come from, we're created as individual human beings by God. And that there was no reason for such inhumane treatment, such, and today, it is one of the main reasons why most of African countries are not able to find their foot in terms of development yet. And I think that that was an opportunity for the entire world, especially Great Britain and those countries that actually perpetrated all those crimes on us, to come together and create some level of friendship and bringing humanity back into realization that what happened was wrong. So I thought it was an opportunity rather than showing chest and beginning to say that if you're demanding repatriation, we're not going to grant you visa. First of all, I don't know the capacity of that political party in the United Kingdom. I don't know their capacity in determining what happened in decisions of the government of the United Kingdom, UK. I don't know. And so it will be difficult to take them serious unless, of course, somebody says that their capacity, what's the name of the party again?
Reform Party.
Reform Party UK.
UK's Reform.
I don't know their capacity. I don't know their political influence. I don't know what kind of voice they have, and I don't know how far that voice. I don't know whether it represents the entirety of the idea of the UK, and that's why I want to be a little soft on them. Other than that, I think that that was a very reckless statement and a decision to take. It is a decision that do not help they themselves, because I thought that these countries that voted for the idea of repatriation, all of them cannot be wrong. We who suffered this crime, we cannot be wrong either. Rather, giving an opportunity for some reconciliation, opportunity to see that we are one, people should forgive, and move on, and you begin to say things like that, what you do, and what you are doing rather, is deepening the suffering, and if you like, you are justifying what you did to us, and that it was good. In any case, with the greatest of respect, I mean, there are many people who have never been to the UK before. They still live, they do business, they do well, they are okay. So I don't see really how important extremely the lifeline of UK visa that you're using to threaten that those who are seeking for genuine concern, a genuine case, and a genuine, demand, if you like, that you can begin to blackmail us, saying that you're not going to give us a visa if we're asking for repatriation. I thought that was, with the greatest of respect, a very reckless statement. I thought that it was not properly thought through, and I believe strongly that it must not be the position of the UK government in its entirety. Otherwise, then I think that calls for a lot of concern.
Right.
It is continuously suggesting that they are more superior in terms of being human than those of us right here. And that thought, that reasoning must be deleted once and for all, because I don't think that, apart from the many opportunities they got from us in terms of our gold, when you go to the United States, I keep saying, the United Kingdom, I keep saying that the pound sterling strength, the strength of the pound sterling, I really don't see the massive, industrialization and anything naturally that they do have that is giving the power to the pound sterling so much. I believe strongly that most of those benefits they are getting are the result of the gold they got from our country. And so we contribute so much to the development of those countries, and it is about time they see us as their foundation, the foundation of who they are and where they are today. And so if we have His Excellency John Dramani Mahama made a brilliant, presentation where many countries believe that that's the way to go, reconciliation, seeing every individual, every human being as created by God, and see whether we can say, hey, let's pat each other back and say what we did was wrong. We're doing this to solve the issues, not even to solve the issues, but to see whether we can create a new path, get new relationship going, and you feel that you can use your visa to threaten demand for report. I mean, I thought it was reckless. Again, that I want to be soft on them, because I do not know the capacity.
Right.
Maybe because you can see any mushroom political party all over the place making statement and all that, that might not be the position of the government and power. So you want to be careful. You don't say things that are not supposed to be said, because it may not be an official position of United Kingdom. And I think that's what I think I had to say for now.
Right. Uncle, it's obvious to note that even that party has received some bashing from some other parties in the UK. This one, a Labour Party spokesperson labelled reforms policy a desperate gimmick, while the Conservatives declined to comment. Liberal Democrat immigration and asylum spokesperson also accused reform of chasing cheap headlines by threatening their allies. So these are some of the parties that have responded to the comments that was made, and I wanted you to factor that in the response.
Well, thank you, David, and good morning to Comrade PC and my good brother. First of all, let me just make 2 points. I'll talk about slavery and reparations, because ever since this came up, I have followed some conversations on various platforms of how some of our own people even see the issue of reparations. They see it, they are looking at it purely on the basis of, oh, there was a slave, there was a transaction of people being sold, and some of our people were involved, so there's no need for reparations. And it is, I find it most unfortunate that some of our own people think this way. Some of our own contemporaries. Now, no, contemporaries. Please, let's not go political on that one. Now, so that's it. Because this slavery was a situation where our kinsfolk were extricated forcibly from the motherland and sent to what was then called the New World as beasts of burden, and they were condemned to a lifetime of that type of life. They had no liberties, no nothing, and they were treated in the most inhumane and dehumanizing situations. That is what we are talking about. Now, having established that, let me go now to the Reform UK. Reform UK is led by a man called Nigel Farage. He used to be a member of the Conservative Party. He used to be a very close ally of the former Prime Minister, the one with the ginger hair. Johnson. And they were the two strong activists in the Brexit campaign. They tried to portray themselves as so British. I mean, they're the most British of the British. That is how they project themselves. And the Prime Minister Johnson, he left. Then there was a breakaway. They broke away from the Conservative Party, and under the leadership of Nigel Farage, and formed Reform UK. They tried to they have campaigned on strong anti-immigration policies. My view of them is people who are still in the many decades ago UK, where UK believed that they were virtually a world empire. That's the world in which Nigel Farage and his people still see themselves. You know, so that just tells you about Nigel Farage. Locally, he's having a lot of political backlash from other political parties and other civil groups, like you mentioned in the article there. So that is where they are. In the aftermath of Donald Trump coming back again, they whipped up their anti-immigration sentiments and they began to gather some popularity. So, you know, as their numbers were coming up, they've been emboldened. And I think Nigel Farage saw this as an opportunity to further escalate his, but the political backlash on him after making this statement has been massive. And the discussions among the local British has established that if Britain were to attempt to make the mistake of banning visas to all the 100 and how many countries that voted for reparations, and their citizens failed to come to England, and many of those citizens, or one of the citizens of those countries who are already in England, as a result decided, look, we are now leaving the UK, the consequences of on the UK economy will be massive. So that alone establishes that this comment by Nigel Farage is not anything. It has failed. It has failed. And for me, what I'm happy about is that it generated a lot of conversation that has made people who otherwise thought like him begin to understand that, oh, and indeed, this reparations, we actually need to take a good look at it and begin to consider, because when he started saying it, some people actually thought it made sense. But as the conversation has gone on, people have begun to realize that no, indeed, this situation was very grave, and as a matter of good conscience, they must begin to do something, at least begin to accept the principle that something must be done in terms of reparations. So for me, in as much as I also want to condemn that statement, a statement which I know in his own quiet time will probably have realized that it didn't help you. I'm happy with how it has gone, you see. And I remember what Comrade Kwesi, the point he emphasized when after the vote and everything, that yes, the work is now going to, a lot of the work is now going to begin. And I see this as a development in that direction, you know, because there are the skeptics and there are those who don't believe. But through some of these things, now some of those skeptics themselves are also beginning to realize that, oh, indeed, this thing was a good thing, and that's why all these countries have supported. And one thing I always say about it is that the fact that all the countries of Africa in one voice agreed on one resolution. That has never happened. The French will always influence their colonies to oppose anything that the other countries are doing. The colonialists have always, because of the puppet regimes that they have always kept on the continent, have always found a way of keeping us divided. But thankfully in this case, we have seen unity. And I want to commend His Excellency President Mahama for the leadership he provided to make this possible. So for me, this comment by Nigel Farage is not going anywhere. And rather, I think it should encourage us and encourage all those who have done so well in this fight to where we've got to continue in the fight.
Comrade Pratt.
Well, I mean, first of all, this is a clear demonstration that there are many people in leadership in the Western capitals who have nothing in their heads but cutting wool. You know, people who cannot correctly analyze the world situation, who don't have the facts, who are confused and so on, and they are in leadership in Western capitalist states. And this is the clearest indication of that. You see, Reform UK, let's assume that it wins the next elections and takes power. If it implements this policy, the United Kingdom will simply collapse.
Absolutely.
I mean, the UK is an empire in decline, an empire on the verge of collapse. Can you imagine the UK's health service without African doctors and nurses? It will collapse. Look at the railway system. Look at the contribution that Asians, Africans and so on are making to the running of the railway system in the UK. It will collapse. What will not collapse? So, Nigel Farage and his Reform UK and so on, they are playing in ignorant and in some cases excessively stupid. They don't understand the world. They don't know where we are. You know, they sit in the comfort of their UK homes and so on and make statements. Look, if they knew the world as it is today, they'll be cautious in making these statements. Why would I struggle to get a visa to go to the UK, to go to London, when Shanghai is there? What has London got that Shanghai doesn't have? What does Bristol have that Moscow doesn't have, and so on? So they are still living in the past. They are still living in the past. They can't face the reality of today. The world has moved on. The world has reached a new stage and they have to wake up to that. Or they will lead their countries, of course their countries are heading to doom, but they will speed the process of getting to doom. That's what Nigel Farage and his Reform UK are doing to the United Kingdom. You see, he's talking about the fact that the UK ought not to be held responsible for historical injustice. What is he talking about? The whole of the UK, its industry, its science, its commerce and so on, is built on historical injustice. Look, there's a judge of the International Criminal Court, let me find the name, Patrick Robinson, who has done a study on reparations and has come to the conclusion that if reparations are demanded, Britain alone's responsibility, the responsibility of Britain alone, is $24 trillion. How is this responsibility calculated? First of all, unpaid wages. Surpluses which were accumulated over the hundreds of years that Africans were made to work as beasts of burden, without pay and so on. That's part of it. Then, beyond that, you come to the institutions in the UK. There's no institution in the UK, and I repeat, no institution in the UK which is prospering today, which is not a beneficiary of the transatlantic slave trade. Take the Barclays Bank, which I always cite. Barclays Bank was established with slave money. The two Barclay brothers who established Barclays Bank were slave traders. So today, if you go on the stock exchange and Barclays Bank is doing well and so on, it is African surpluses which were generated, which were stolen by the elite in Britain. You understand? And I want to go even further. You see, the British monarch, King Charles, on ceremonial occasions when he drives or he rides in his gold chariot, not golden, gold chariot, all of that gold came from Cape Coast. Did they pay for it? Did they pay for the gold which was used in constructing that chariot? It was stolen from Cape Coast. You understand? And I can go on and on and on. In any case, we have constantly made this argument that reparation is not about the payment of money. Because it's insulting to us as Africans, as victims, to be saying that, oh, just pay us some money and let's forget about what you did to us. What was done to us cannot be paid for by money. And indeed, we're not just talking about history, because today, as we sit here, that crime is still being committed against us. And why do I say this? You take the paper bull which was issued in 1452. Okay? It legalized, institutionalized racism. When the Pope issued the paper bull and called upon King Alfonso of Portugal to come to our part of the world to civilize us, there was an assumption of superiority. How do you civilize the people if you are equal with them? So there was an assumption of superiority. That assumption of superiority has been the bedrock of the racism which we continue to suffer today throughout the world. And we need to reverse that. Today, African spirituality has been so devalued through instruments of the transatlantic slave trade, through laws which were imposed upon us and so on. We need to restore the validity of African spirituality to come to the point where African spirituality and European spirituality will be seen as competing superstitions at the same level, competing superstitions at the same level. You understand? Now, this threat to cancel visas, let them keep their visas. In fact, if we get the 24 trillion that they owe us, according to Judge Robinson, the 24 trillion they owe us, who will go to Britain? Who will go to Britain? In any case, they shouldn't make the mistake of assuming that we are just some powerless people they can kick about as well. We are not that powerless. If Africa, and indeed the Caribbean and others, decided that we are going to cancel trade relations with the UK, how would the UK survive? The UK feeds on us. They continue to feed on us. And then they are talking about cancellation of aid. So-called foreign aid has been described by they themselves as instruments of foreign policy. What does that mean? So aid is a weapon. By their own definition, aid is their weapon. You understand? We would not allow their weapons to destroy us. In any case, there are studies which suggest that for every dollar that comes from the so-called advanced Western countries into our economies, they take $3 out. Let them keep their dollar, let us keep our $3 and see who will survive. They are in a weak position. They have to understand that they are in a very weak position when it comes to this discussion. And then they said that, look, they would not be held accountable for historical injustices. Who told them that? They should look at their own records. Up until 2015, Britain was still paying compensation to the descendants of slave owners for the loss of their property. The Africans were considered property. And after the abolition of the slave trade, Britain decided to pay compensation to the descendants, and that compensation was paid until 2015. So when it comes to the so-called slave owners, when it comes to the barbarians who use human beings as beasts of burden and so on, it is okay to right historical wrongs. When it comes to the victims, it is not okay to right historical wrongs. What nonsense is that? Absolute nonsense. What nonsense is this? You see, we must send the world out there. People in the Reform UK, the likes of Nigel Farage and others, should be made to understand in very clear language that we are not begging, we are not beggars. We are struggling for what legitimately belongs to us. And they cannot stop us. And we will win the struggle in much the same way that we won the struggle for national independence. We will win the struggle. We are not begging them. We are struggling for what legitimately belongs to us. There's what they call the artifacts. That they are keeping stolen artifacts in their museums and so on. The use of the word artifacts, I think, is mistaken. What they are keeping, to a very large extent, are not artifacts. The human heads they are keeping in their museums, are they artifacts? The heads of our heroes, that they murdered because they were resisting their inhuman and barbaric treatment, are they artifacts? The bodies of African leaders that they stole, that they keep, that they killed and stole and keep in their museums, are they artifacts? In any case, let's ask ourselves, what civilization exhibits human body parts? What civilization exhibits human body parts? They should stop the nonsense. We are fed up with their nonsense, and they annoy us when they make such lame and useless threats. Why? At the time that Britain was said to be ruling the waves, we fought them and defeated them and gained our independence. Today, that Britain is running an inflation rate of more than 20%. They want to threaten us. They are joking. Those days are gone and gone forever. And we will get what belongs to us and so on. Let me make one point that I've been dying to make for a very long time. We should not, as Ghanaians, reduce the victories we are chalking in this struggle for reparation to Mahama and the NDC. It's a dangerous thing to do. It is not sensible. Let me explain to you. The Caribbean states started this struggle for reparations long before the African Union joined. To make this a Ghana affair, a Mahama affair, and an NDC affair is an insult to the CARICOM states. They started this struggle long ago. Besides, this resolution which was presented to the UN General Assembly was presented on behalf of 55 African countries and CARICOM states. It wasn't a sole initiative of Ghana. Okay? Ghana had to play that role because only one country, only one person could present that resolution. As a matter of fact, President John Dramani Mahama was appointed as the AU champion for reparations last year. You understand? He was appointed by his peers as AU champion for reparations. He did an excellent job, no doubt at all. He did an excellent job. But he did the job as an envoy of his peers, as an appointee of the AU, and we must make that clear. I mean, Safuhini made a point which makes me so very happy. What we should be celebrating is the fact that for the first time, 55 African countries without exception supported a cause. What we should be celebrating is that for the first time, Caribbean states and African states came together and fought for a cause. That unity is what we should be celebrating. Because if you know our history, 1963, when we tried to form the Organization of African Unity, look at the divisions, the Casablanca group, the Morovia group, and so on. We have overcome that. We have reached a new threshold. We're on the verge of a new beginning. That is what we should be celebrating. And that is what we should be urging our leaders to recognize. You understand? Today, in Africa, there are so many countries you and I cannot travel to because of visa restrictions and so on. Let our leaders tear down these useless boundaries which was imposed on us in 1884 at the Berlin Conference. We had no representation at the Berlin Conference. And they drew lines which divided us and so on. Let us start with a visa-free Africa for Africans. There are so many things that we can do. You understand? Reparations are about securing justice for the African people. Reparations must necessarily involve the restructuring of global institutions like the UN, especially its Security Council, like the IMF, like the World Trade Organization, and so on. They need to be restructured. We need to reset the whole world. The world has to make sense. We need to build a new world in which resources which could be expended on the development of agriculture, on the development of health, on expansion of access to education and so on, would not be spent on the production of weapons of mass destruction. That is our charge. That is reparation. You understand? So we need to understand reparation in its broadest context. Then there are those ignorant people who know nothing about their own history, who are so confused, who say that, oh, we were also involved. How were we involved? Look at the statistics. 12.6 million Africans were captured and turned into beasts of burden. For every African who was captured and made a slave, 3 other people died. How did they die? They died in wars of resistance against slavery. They died in wars of resistance. They resisted. How come that we were equal partners in this crime against humanity, and yet today you can't find the profits anywhere in Africa? Where can you find the profits in Africa? All the profits are in Europe. So even if you assume, if you accept this notion, wrong notion, that we were party to it, can't we be asking the question, how come that we were partners and you took everything and we took nothing? Doesn't that itself call for reparation? They should stop the nonsense. And Reform UK must understand that they don't threaten us. They cannot threaten us. Refusal of visa. Why? How many Africans have gone to the UK? How many Africans? But they still thrive. Go to our villages, they are engaged in agriculture. They eat organic food, which they cannot get in the UK and so on. Who says that the UK is heaven? The UK is not heaven. And we will not be threatened with refusal of visa to visit the UK. Let them keep their visas.
We want to move on and look at other nagging issues. Ofori-Atta has been released from ICE detention and is raising a lot of anxiety, speculations, and talk around town. A lot of Ghanaians are not happy, but the indications are that his passport has been taken, right? Is to reappear before the courts, on the extradition charges. So it doesn't look like it's absolutely free. He's home. He's on bail. But the case and then the issue is still pending. I want to start, Uncle Philip, with you on this. How are you taking this news?
Well, you know, Ken Ofori-Atta is going through a legal process. And it is very clear that he's doing everything possible to take maximum advantage of the system as it exists, to stay away from Ghana. If Ken Ofori-Atta wanted to come to Ghana, I think he would simply have told the people who are detaining him and everything, you know something, I want to go, I'm on my way to my country. So, and that would have been the end of the matter. But look at what he's going through. It tells you that he's determined not to come back. He is very, very determined not to come back. So why should he be determined not to come back? I mean, he was a very prominent citizen of Ghana, former Minister for Finance for about 7 years, high top government official, top member of his party, ruling party. So what was his problem? If he has nothing to hide, he has no issue, why is he there? Why should he subject himself to all this humiliation? The photographs of him in all this detainee apparel and all that, him sitting there, you know, if it was vetting committee, he would have been limping and telling him he's not well. But when they took him to ICE, he's sitting there like that, he's there. He shouldn't, you know, Ghanaians, we've passed that stage, oh. We've passed that stage. If he wants to help his own case, he should just come down to Ghana. All the former appointees, there are those allegations have been made against, there are those suspicions have been made against, they are all walking around free. The law is taking its course. The law is taking its course. What does he have to fear? Come back to Ghana and defend. If you say you are a man, you are the God-fearing man, every day you are praying to God and quoting, when they ask you, the economic guru, when they ask you questions on economics, they are quoting the Bible. Prove that you are a God-fearing Christian. Come down and face whatever charges and defend yourself. If anybody accuses me of anything, David, I don't have a problem. I'll go and face it and defend myself if I know I haven't committed a crime. I don't see why I shouldn't go and defend myself.
What if you fear the system?
Fear what? So give me grounds to believe that you fear the system. If I were to say that, oh, look at what they did to David, so why should I go? Give me one example of somebody who has been mistreated. No such example. Not that I know of. So give proper grounds and say, for this and that reason, I will not come. I believe I will not be. The Attorney General of Ghana.
The whole case has been politicized, and it feels that it's, you know, because of the politicization of the allegations, you will not have fair treatment. The
Attorney General of the Republic of Ghana has informed us that he has given assurance in the highest levels that if the man comes to Ghana, he will go through the proper legal processes. There is nobody in Ghana who is going through legal processes other than what is laid down for all of us. So what is his excuse? I mean, he's not helping his case. And I believe the United States of America that is always on the throats of African politicians about probity and accountability and good governance and everything. If that's a former minister who is accountable to the people who put him there, and he has questions to answer, it is for the United States for their own reputation to ensure that the man comes and answers these questions. I mean, there's no prosecution, there's no persecution. There's no persecution. Yes, it can be understood that when there's a change of government and you are living lives, when there's a change of government, actually you'll be afraid. It is human. You suddenly remember that, hey, so Sana, I was living lives like that. So all politicians should remember, while you are in power, take your time. Because that power will change. You will not be there forever. It is a fact of life. All over the world. All over. You see. So, apprehension is understandable. But it is no excuse to try and avoid the law. if you have a case to answer, if you've done a job, and anybody holding a position knows that you will be accountable. So if you have been asked to account, what is your problem? If you are supposed to be the man of God you claim to be, come and answer. You have no case. You see, and the more he does this, he's not helping himself. He's not helping the man who appointed him, the cousin who he holds in such high esteem, the cousin who, as president, gave you that position. If you respect him, you will come and answer. The man himself is here. All the other appointees, everybody is here. So what is your problem? So I don't see. So what I'm concerned, at the end of the matter, he has only just been released from ICE detention, which I think is good. And if, honestly, if I was him, and I've had to be subjected, former Minister for Finance, and his residence is one of the most affluent parts of Washington, D.C., where all the top politicians live. That's where he's living. Why would I want to subject myself to that? I will come back home and defend myself. The way he got the best lawyers in America to defend him, he can get the best lawyers in Ghana to defend him. He should come and defend himself. The longer he stays away, the more he shows that he has something to hide. And if he wants to clear his name, he should be a man and come down and defend himself. That's what he should do. And stop getting people to be issuing statements on his behalf.
Yes, thank you very much. You see, when you sit again with Uncle Kwesi, you have an opportunity to learn a lot also. And I commend him for his thought on the reparation issues. You see, the Ken Ofori-Atta matter is a matter that is, in my own view, a very serious matter that should not be seen as an ordinary individual whose activities caused only financial losses to the states, but decides to run away, and that we are pursuing him to come back and answer questions. It is also an issue of planting some level of thought in the mind of Ghanaians, especially those of us who find ourselves in political field, that at the end of the day, you can do all that you want, still cause all financial loss to the state. As a politician, all you need to do is, when you lose power, run away from the country. And I don't think that behavior, that thing, it's anything that we should plant in our kids. People who are coming up, the growing class, the politicians who are having positions, been appointed to various positions today, that thought, that understanding, that belief is what I am worried, deeply worried about. That you do anything you want and you have the opportunity to run away because you've made a lot of money. A friend of mine was telling me that I will not allow you to steal Ghana government money. Then tomorrow, your son will come and tell my son that me dem papa mobirabia, that me dem papa bobra. Giving the opportunity, the level of equal opportunity to both of you, perhaps I might have done well. Ofori-Atta was supposed to have been charged with about 70 counts of various offenses. Those are allegations that he should have opportunity to come and speak to, answer, clear himself. And David, amazingly, just one of those allegations, those cases, cost the Ghanaian taxpayer 1.4 billion Ghana cedis. out of the 70 allegations, just one out of the 70 cost a Ghanaian taxpayer 1.4 billion Ghana cedis. Do you know how much and what 1.4 billion Ghana cedis can do for the ordinary young boy and girl who is still attending school under tree, who still have not seen electricity in his village, whose roads are not still constructed, who is still standing and waiting for the rain to stop before he can get a place to sleep? Do you know how much 1.4 billion can do to the no bed syndrome? And don't forget, when we say no bed, it is not because there is no structure called bed. It comes with a whole lot of package. It got to do with health workers, all the accoutrements and the things that they used to work, doctors being opposed and all that. Put all of them together, then you can say no bed. Do you know how much that money, 1.4 billion Ghana cedis, can do? And we're talking about one out of the 70 allegations that were made about the cousin of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Again, it is also fortifying the position of people who think that when your family member becomes the head of state of this country and you are given a position, then you are given a blank check, opportunity to do anything you want and get away with it. That cannot be the behavior of a Ghanaian. And that is my worry. My worry is that we are planting a behavior, some convention, that if we do not check, can hurt this country's future. And that is my problem. But who is he? Who is Ken Ofori-Atta? The point I'm making is, David, who is he? Was he born differently the way you were born? Who is he? Did he not grow and go to the same schools that we all attended? Who is he? Is he Jesus? So why should his case be different from ordinary Ghanaians' case? My worry is that we're talking about the inhumane treatment that these foreign communities came, the slave trade, how our forefathers were brutalized, were taken through horrible situations, repatriated into their countries to do all the works. The White House was built by the African black. But if we cannot see that, and we have these kind of characters doing these things to ourselves, don't you think that is why some element like them may think that the repatriation, what is the name? Reparation is not necessary. Don't you think that? Don't you think that the reason we want Ken Ofori-Atta to come to this country to answer questions of allegations against him are so serious, and that his cousin Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo must play a role in ensuring that Ken Ofori-Atta Kuntununku comes to this country to answer questions that borders on corruption, borders on misbehavior, stealing, and causing financial loss to this state? You don't think it is important that His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo should have a responsibility? And he must be deeply worried. He must be deeply worried. Remember when Ken Ofori-Atta reportedly, was reported to be ill somewhere 2020, elections, after 2020 elections, when I believe strongly in my spirit that election was not fairly won by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. But that's not what we're talking about. In running into the appointment of ministers and officials to run his affair, Ken Ofori-Atta was said to be ill and that he was seeking medical attention. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo could not find anybody worthy to hold his position as a finance minister. He virtually reserved the position for Ken Ofori-Atta till he had to come back to this country and to take that position. You remember when J. Mensah Bonsu would have to read budgets as a majority leader at the time? We have to reserve the position for one individual who was seen by the MPP administration to be the most competent person to handle the affairs of our country, and he was treated like a king, a monarch, as somebody you cannot touch when it comes to economic activities and running the affairs of this country, holding the position as a finance minister. You remember all that? Today, why is he running away from justice? I want to also remind you that Ofori-Atta is not the only person that must come to this country. But I also know that the Court of Competent Coordinate passed judgment about one of our own, Sedinam Tamakulu, that everything that this government must do to ensure that Sedinam Tamakulu comes to this country, she must come. I am saying that we're building a country where when you lose power as a political activist, a political, if you like, party, your members must not feel intimidated. Your members must feel that irrespective of everything, the laws will give you the opportunity to defend yourself. It must not matter whether you are MPP or NDC. In any case, all the people that have been arrested and have been detained and have been given bail in this country, is Ken Ofori-Atta better than them? Is that not same discrimination that we ourselves are in a way planting among ourselves? Of course, what is the name? Chamawuntumi was arrested, detained. Is that not it? There are prominent people, like Professor, whatever, about the SkyTrain matter. He was arrested, detained. You remember the National Service matter? All those people. You remember the Signal Bureau guy who was the pastor who was preaching, go to church, and and they go and oh, God have mercy. So I think that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, one of his achievements will be measured on how he is able to bring all that are charged with various offenses to come and answer to their charges, and those that are found culpable are punished by law, irrespective of where you come from, who you are, your color, the language you speak, but must be succumbed to the laws of our country. Ofori-Atta must not be an exception and must come to this country. And it is important for tomorrow, not only today.
Ken Ofori-Atta's issue.
Well, first of all, I have a great deal of pity for Ken Ofori-Atta. There's a man who is past the retiring age, who is seen in prison clothes, who is compelled to play hide and seek with the security services in the United States of America. He's been in detention for a while, denied access to his family home and so on. You have to pity him, especially when you come to realize that he's not in the best of health. You understand? So I'm so full of pity for him. I feel sad for him. But at the same time, I'm convinced that he has brought this upon himself. He's going through this as a matter of choice. He's not the only person who served in the Akufo-Addo regime. How come that he's the only person playing hide and seek with everybody? How come? Some of the people he served in the Akufo-Addo administration with are here. Allegations have been made against them. They've been interrogated by the police. Some of them are before court and so on. They go home. They're on bail. They go home. They're able to eat contumely. It's not a problem for them and so on. They go home. They don't go through the humiliation that Ken Ofori-Atta has subjected himself to. And I, if I were close to him, would advise him to abandon this reckless path and come home. You understand? So far, there's no indication that Ghana operates kangaroo courts. In fact, if you look at the judicial system they left behind, most of the judges were appointed by his own government. Indeed, if you take the current Chief Justice, he was appointed onto the High Court in an MPP regime. He was promoted to the Courts of Appeal by an MPP government and was actually promoted to the Supreme Court by an MPP administration. What is his fear? Is he saying for one moment that the judicial system that they contributed in building is defective? Is he saying that the judges that they themselves appointed lack integrity? He can't say that. You understand? So if I were him, I would come back home and answer the questions which are being put. You see, our legal system, our judicial system and so on, you know, thrives on the presumption of innocence for any person against whom an allegation is made. So today, nobody can describe Ken Ofori-Atta as a criminal. He's not. He has not been convicted by a competent court of justice. You understand? And he should come, like everybody else, and defend himself. He should come. You know, some of us were perhaps not as lucky as he is. I was put before the National Public Tribunal. You know, where you had no right of appeal and so on. But we still faced the justice system at the time and came back and came out unscratched. Today, why? This country is governed under a constitution. A constitution that he himself promised to defend and protect when he was sworn into office as finance minister. A constitution that the president who appointed him swore, made an oath to defend. Why is he afraid? What is his problem? I don't understand. You understand? I simply don't understand why. And I really felt bad. I felt very sad, quite honestly, when I saw pictures of him, unless those pictures are faked, pictures of him in prison gown and so on. Why? It's so undignified, and he should get out of it. You know, his conduct seems to suggest that the U.S. is perhaps more civilized than Ghana. And if that is what he believes, then there's a problem. He's ready to face the U.S. justice, but he will not face the justice in his country because he thinks that the U.S. justice system is superior. How can he think that? Given the history of the justice system of the U.S., given what happened to Paul Robeson and others when they faced the U.S. judiciary, nobody can make that claim. And I think that it's in his own interest to come back home and face the charges. What would happen? Ken Ofori-Atta, if he had come home under normal circumstances, would have arrived at the Accra International Airport. He probably would have been picked up. He would have been interrogated. The laws of Ghana says that he cannot be kept for more than 24 hours without prosecution or without bail. He has the best of lawyers in the country. He would have been granted bail. He would have gone home. He would have been reporting every now and then to answer questions. If he's charged, he will go to court with his lawyers and defend himself, as happens to everybody, every citizen. What is his problem? I don't understand Ken Ofori-Atta's problem. I don't understand his problem at all. You know, what is he running away from? What is he afraid of? Do you understand me? I don't understand.
We'll move on then. We're going to see how those legal proceedings will go in the US. But he's billed to appear, I think, on the 27th of this month. right? He is to appear before the court this time round on the extradition charges that has been leveled against him by Ghana. So the legal battles, will still continue, and it begins.
I feel cringy when I hear some people gloat in the misfortune of their fellow citizens. We shouldn't. We shouldn't. Anybody, regardless of their political party, regardless of their religious belief and so on, when they are in moments of pain and so on, they deserve some sympathy and so on. You understand? Everybody. Doesn't matter where they are. So to gloat in the misfortune of fellow countrymen and so on, I think is completely unacceptable. Let's be clinical about this issue. Let's be very clinical. There are allegations against him under the laws, under the Constitution. He has to answer those allegations. If the prosecuting authorities feel that he's been unable to answer those satisfactorily, it is their duty to prosecute him. So they are doing their duty. There's no gloating in it. There's no satisfaction in the pain that he would endure. He'll be prosecuted because that is the Constitution we have elected for ourselves. You understand? So he's prosecuted. If the judges feel that he has committed a crime, they will jail him. They will jail him not because he's an NPP member or because he's Ken Ofori-Atta. They will jail him because in the wisdom of the judges, in their practice, they would have come to the conclusion that he's committed a crime under the Constitution, which he himself has promised to uphold. You understand? That's all. Take out the emotions. Let's deal with the facts as they are. Let's deal with the situation from a purely detached, clinical, professional point of view. And then everybody is free.
With the greatest of respect, I don't think anybody will want to. But you see, like you said,
so yes,
Mr. Ofori-Atta brought this on himself.
Anybody may not want to, but sometimes somebody might sound like that.
No, I'm saying that Ken Ofori-Atta brought all this on himself.
Notwithstanding,
I think that trying to avoid and running away from this country was unnecessary. So then you create all kind of possible doubts for yourself, bringing all kind of thought up and down on yourself. I think that if Ken was here, right, maybe his matters may not even be so serious as we're talking. Like I say, you are picked, you go to police, you go to Yoko, you come home, you are billed and all that. After all, many people have suffered jail for their involvement in so many things, Victor Salome and all those guys, So for me, I think that it's rather embarrassing his own cousin, the president, what he's doing. Right. We all want him to come home, and he must come. Just like any other individual, irrespective of your political affiliation. Right. You must come home and answer. Otherwise, what are we building for tomorrow?
Right. See, Honorable, I suspect that you are a young politician. Yes. I strongly suspect that you are a young politician. Maybe the passage of time would open your eyes to some things. I recall in the early 80s and mid-80s when we were being thrown into prison without charge, without trial and so on, that jubilation, some of the people who today are close friends and so on. Because we were opposed to their government and they thought it was okay so to do. Why? The tables turned at some point. Nobody will be in government forever.
At all.
No situation is permanent. What is constant about this world is movement, motion. Yeah. Okay? So a time would come when the tables will turn. One day, maybe 20 years later, maybe 200 years later, the time will come when the tables will turn. Today, when we speak, when we comment on issues and so on, we should imagine that one day, the tables will turn. Would we like what may be happening today to happen to us 10 years later? I'm not sure. Would we like to set precedents that others will follow? This should be a guiding principle. I completely agree that there's no indication that Ofori-Atta will suffer any political victimization if he comes home. Why? If for nothing at all, I know some of the people at the helm of affairs today. I know their passion for justice, their commitment to defend the Constitution and so on. I'll be surprised if anybody were to tinker with the rights of Ken Ofori-Atta, whether John Mahama, as I know him, will turn away and allow Ken Ofori-Atta to be treated roughly and inhumanly and against the law. It won't happen. Not under the John Mahama I know. You understand? So that's a fact. But the gloating in his plight, sometimes people even laugh at him, they ridicule him and so on. It's not necessary. It's absolutely unnecessary. Let him come and answer the charges against him. If he's found guilty, he will go to jail like any other Ghanaian. Finish. But until then, there's a presumption of innocence. Let's work within the ambit of the Constitution and the law. Finish.
You know, what is even worse is that his lawyers could even say, oh, you know what? Listen to how that man was speaking on TV the other day.
Yeah.
You see how they are speaking on TV? Yeah. If he comes to Ghana, there are people who want to see him, and they will use it as grounds.
Yeah.
So that is what makes it worse. No. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm speaking generally. You see, Comrade Kwesi is giving all of us a caution that political history has taught us these things. And I'm only just adding to it. I'm not making reference to any specific I'm talking generally. So let's just leave it. Yeah.
You want to make a point?
No, that's fine. I mean, that's a good advice from Uncle Kwesi. Again, my only worry is that, like everybody will agree with me, the thought of let me do it and run away is my worry. Otherwise, everybody will learn it. And that is not going to help these countries tomorrow.
We've all said that, and I agree. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we have some few minutes, but let's see if we can chip this one in quickly on the family planning issue. Yes, because there are some supplies where... Right. Okay, so we should rather look at the mining. I thought that we... Yeah, so we can do... Yes, we will do the family planning issues. I think that if we have more time, we'll just put that one in. Right, so there are family planning supplies. We're told that is left to rot at the ports. I believe the Tema ports. 500,000 Ghana dollars worth of family planning supplies. And the indications we are having is that some of the clinics who are into family planning, practices are really suffering, because we are encouraged to go into family planning, and if we have supplies worth that huge amount, right? And we're talking about issues here about corruption. I've been monitoring the PAC sitting, the Public Accounts Committee sitting, and I get so mad when I watch them. We can't get $500,000 to pay up family planning supplies, but yet there's a lot of mismanagement and corruption at those levels. Honorable, I want to start with you. You are in Parliament, so when you see these figures,
and it's worrying, and we should all agree that it is worrying. 500,000 worth of family
planning supplies,
supplies.
Right?
I think it's worrying, and nobody should celebrate it, because these are the Ghanaian taxpayers' money that have been, and I don't know why it should even happen. These are, equipment, or if you like, products for Ghana. And so whose responsibility is it that those things are cleared? If there are issues with it, whose responsibility is it to give us reports indicating why ABCD is unwholesome or not? For me to leave it to the mercy of the weather and to be causing that financial loss, if you like, I think people must answer. people must answer. And again, it should not be business as usual. You see, this country is undergoing a reset. And the things we did before this time must not be usual. It must be unusual. People must begin to answer questions. If you look at this government, this administration properly, about 1.5 years to 2 years, running to 2 years, you will not see scandals. You know why? Because His Excellency John Dramani Mahama sets the standard and ensure that, and he keep warning them, those appointees.
Are we using just scandals to mark the performance of the government?
No, I'm only saying based on what we're discussing, that if you go and bring the matter, you will go.
Right.
And he's treating every Ghanaian equal. For me, those responsible for these things must be called to answer. And I think it must not be a thing we should celebrate.
But that will fall at your doorstep.
You look at
the end, the government's,
yes,
doorsteps, because you are currently in power.
The fact that
so if it had been left to rot during the NPP's regime, and you take over, and you still, these supplies are still at the port, it raises concern.
And that is why we have individual responsibilities in our government. I am saying that those responsible must be called to answer.
Right.
And that is why we have responsibilities. Everybody have their sectors they are running. Everybody have their, responsibilities that they run to form the entirety of the government. And so if one portion is seen to be doing something untoward, that must be looked at, and whoever is responsible for that must be called to answer. And I think that knowing Akando, that I know, the Minister for Health, I think that he's one gentleman, fine gentleman. I believe that will not want to leave these things to. He would definitely go there. I believe strongly that he's even going there by now, looking at exactly what it is. If there is anything we need to do, whoever will have to answer should answer. I mean, nobody is being shouldered for wrongdoing in this administration. That is why we're seeing the progress we're seeing. Otherwise, if we leave everybody to do whatever happened in the previous administration, then what is the promise of resetting these countries? You understand? So for me, very simple. Let's look at it. Whose responsibility is it? Let the person answer, then we move on.
Yeah, what I don't like is the politics of it. I can't accommodate the politics. This is a scandal. It's a scandal, and I'll deal with it on, like we deal with all cases, on the merits of the matter. This thing came. It was $2.1 million worth of medical supplies. There was a brouhaha several months ago, and the government intervened. 1.6 million worth of the supplies have been evacuated from the port and sent into the system. The issue at stake is the $500,000 worth of supplies in containers still sitting at the port, where people are worried that there's a problem of expiry and even the holderness and suitability of the products because of the way they are being handled. That is the issue. Now when this thing came up the first time, the ministers, everybody, all running around trying to solve the problem. 1.6 million went out. It's left for 500,000. Our concentration should be, why are we here now? At that time, what was the problem? It was found that there were certain institutional challenges between Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health, Customs. Some were under different labeling, some were different categorizations. So there were some bureaucratic problems that caused this difficulty. My expectation was that whatever difficulties would have caused this problem would have been resolved, and the necessary measures would have been put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Now, here we are being told $500,000 worth of a former consignment of $2.1 million. I'll ask the question, between when that consignment came into Ghana, sometime last year, early last year, or whatever it was, and now, have other consignments also come? What is the status of those consignments? So when we are looking at these issues, we should look at it more, you know what I'm saying? We take out the politics. And if we want to help this country, we want to ensure that the officials put in systems. Look, part of our problems is that we have bureaucratic processes that are not helpful to us. Something that could easily have been cleared in one day or over a few days, it goes backwards and forwards, and is there for months. These are the things we want to correct. So I want to know, first of all, why the 1.6 was able to, after all the headache, it went out. These ones are still outstanding. And because even part of the problem was even the transportation, how it was going to be moved, the cost of the transportation, etc. Even the handling, how to be loaded on the logistical chain. All these things came up in the previous situation. So what is the issue? That is what we should look at, And I will want to see situations where proper measures will be put in place, proper processes will be put in place, so we don't hear this thing again.
Yes, Ms. Brad.
There's a very simple matter, but it's also so very embarrassing. You see, we are not just talking about family planning supplies, which have been left in the pots for 2 years, some of which has gotten rotten. There is something which is systemic, which is not in our interest. Cocoa board, they bring in cocoa sacks. They are allowed to gather demurrage in the ports. They are auctioned. Traders come from Nigeria and buy it very cheap and take it away to Nigeria, and in some cases even sell it to state institutions. There have been cases where things have been sold to state institutions. And I'm sitting there and saying, but this doesn't make sense. In some instances, goods imported for the benefit of Ghana and its people are withheld because government has not paid the relevant taxes on it to government. Masha, it simply doesn't make any sense. The government has not paid itself. So things that government has imported are left to rot. The government has not paid itself. So things that government has imported for itself are auctioned to private people who sell it back to government. Does this make sense? We need to overhaul the bureaucracy. We need to overhaul the bureaucracy completely. We need to hold some people accountable for these huge losses. Yes, it doesn't make sense to me. No sense at all. No sense at all.
I don't know whether you're monitoring the sitting, the Public Accounts Committee sitting. Yeah. And one thing that is obvious is that people have found ways over the period to go around the system. Right? All the systems that have been put in place, they found a way to go around it.
The problem we have in Ghana is that a lot of the time we put people in places who have no business being there. That is the truth. Somebody who has never worked anywhere before, he hasn't had any experience, then he's appointed and put somewhere, and he's taking some of what he believes are the best decisions. Only for an auditor to come and show him that what you are doing is wrong. He too, because he's a political man, he said, who the hell are you? Like one person was saying the other day, the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee was asking him, how? Because the man felt that, me, I'm a big man in my party, I'm doing this, and then you, who are you, the auditor, to come and ask me that? Because so far as he's concerned, he thinks he's done the right thing. This is why the problem
has to be clear criteria for appointment. You cannot be chief executive of a state institution if you don't have XYZ qualifications, and we must insist on it. You don't pick people from the street and make them managing directors, chief executives of vital state institutions.
Job for the boys, they call it.
You see,
you not agree to that, but it's happening. It is. Anyway. I don't think my my producers will allow us to have a discussion on that man. Can I get 10 minutes? Okay, they said. All right, so we'll do some messages and then we would wrap it up. This one says, "Good morning, Pan African TV and its and the viewers."
Who said no? What is going to happen after the show? Anyway, no problem. Somebody has to take the decision.
Do I have the 10 minutes?
No.
Okay, all right. So I have the 10 minutes. All right, so I have 10 minutes to do that, man. Right. So, and I want to start with you, Uncle, on this one. So we over the week we were told that Daman, the mining lease at Daman has been granted to EMP, that's Engineers and Planners, right? After going through that successful bidding, test, $500 million. Right, so that was the threshold, and they've been able to meet that threshold. That was the least threshold, right? And they've been able to meet it. Behind that, I've had issues. Yesterday when we were having the program, somebody also sent me messages on my WhatsApp about this Bogoso Pristia thing, and people are just saying that, like, look,
man, you asked for 10 minutes, and you're taking 4 of it, and you're bringing Bogoso into the man.
I just wanted him to chip in all that. If you can just factor in.
When 4 of us are 10 minutes.
So please come in for me. So EMP.
First of all, I am, as a citizen of Ghana, I'm happy that there's an indigenous company that is going to run the mine. Our mining sector, from the early days of Boasi, we've had top Ghanaians at all levels. Somehow or the other, we've never been able to come around together and completely take over the mining sector. So I see this as one bold. Well, efforts have been made along the way, yes. None have been entirely successful, but right now, where we've got to, I'm happy that, and I'm also happy that it appears that the process has been quite transparent, and everybody seems, well, I can't say everybody, there are some who are still complaining, and they will always complain, but it appears that generally there's an acceptance that they have won it on merit. I'll listen a bit about how operations of EMP was before the situation in that mine, which showed that they had a lot of experience, doing a lot of work, doing nearly much of the haulage and processing of the mine on behalf of the owners. So I think they stand a fair chance of being able to run it well. So all I can say is I wish them well.
Okay, so my personal view is that it is about time that our golds are mined by ourselves Ghanaians, and that is why I am happy that engineers and planners, they are able to take this bold decision. I think that anybody who feel that this decision is not in the right direction is not being, well, may not be a proper Ghanaian. Because you see, what is the core? I mean, how do we mine? And that we've been mining so many years before my father was born, and that we cannot go and pick our own gold from our own grounds now and own the gold. I think if anybody is against this deal, then the person would want to explain to some of us to understand. I commend the engineers and planners. I am calling on many more Ghanaians who are able to generate that kind of fund and to go into taking over our own mind as Ghanaians, mine the gold ourselves. Look, why can't we do exploration, okay? Do all the geological whatever services, do the exploration, have our document ready, it is there, okay? So for example, this area, we've done it, it is there. We know the quantity of gold expected to be there. When you are even from the foreign country, you come and say, Massa, this is what we have here. We'll give you 50%. Go and bring your equipment and your money. This is what we know is here. We've done all the geological and whatever, studies already. This is it. We'll give you 60%. We'll take 40%. Come and mine. They will come. Or Ghanaians will go and do our own thing. So I commend that.
Right.
Thank you.
Comment, Fred.
Well, so far I haven't heard that any laws have been broken. I haven't heard about any unfair practices and so on. And it is clear that engineers and planners won this bid on merit. So that's fine. I mean, As for those who want to link this deal with the fact that his brother is the president and his brother uses his private jet as well, that's their headache. You understand? Because the reverse is that once your brother becomes president, then you should starve to death and you should not be able to do any business. I think that is clearly unacceptable. You understand? Yes, I prefer Ghanaian companies taking charge of some aspects of our economy to foreign companies. I agree, that's a principle. But if you're taking mining or the extractive industry, we must begin to go beyond that.
I mean of JM, but they did not listen. Okay, the Senin Ghanaians are watching. Okay, all right. Twaso in opposition, I guess. Yes. Rekun Wood writes, "Hi David. If Mr. Okay, all right. Somebody wanted you to touch on the Bogosu thing." Charles Thompson says, "Get back to your ramshackle, right? Please, let's keep it." It's not in hypocrisy. Lastly, Charles Champon writes, says, "I think the hegemony of the USA is being